Guitar virtuoso Steve Vai goes through his top 5 tips for guitarists. 1. Identify the way you feel about what you're doing. Whatever you do, whether you have to change the batteries in your stomp box, whether you have to talk to attorneys or managers, if you're deciding how you're going to make a record or how you're going to make a living, all that stuff is important, but it's not of absolute importance. What's of absolute importance is the quality of your inspiration. Everything else comes from that. Even before the quality of the inspiration, you need to know how you feel, because the way you feel flows into all of your actions. That's not even debatable, nor is it my opinion, it's just the way it works. You need to get in touch with the thoughts you're thinking in regards to what you need to do. Once you identify the way you're thinking, you have the freedom, and this is virtually the one freedom you have that nobody can touch, to choose the thoughts you want to think to change the way you feel. 2. Create a goal. Now that you've discovered that you have the ability to enjoy any situation, you need to create a goal. I should state that it's not entirely necessary to create a goal, you can just go along playing, and whatever comes comes. That's fine. But it's nice to look forward and say, you know what? I would like to do this. Now, that goal can be something very simple, like making the decision to go out and buy a guitar. Or it can be deciding to go to music school or not, or who you're going to perform with. It's great to be able to create a goal, and then you go back to number 1 and say, alright, now how do I feel about that goal? You'll know if there's any disturbance inside or a contraction, and if there is, it's only because you're feeling insecure, overwhelmed or unworthy. 3. Educate yourself about the music business. It's always good to know as much as you can about the business you're actually in. Even a little bit can help. Here again, you've got to go back to tips number 1 and 2, and once you do, hopefully the way you approach your understanding of the music business is exciting to you. You don't need to be all forensic about this, unless you're really fascinated by this kind of stuff. But there are certain things you do need to understand, like how to protect yourself and how the business basically works. This will all be very useful to you. It's not that difficult, so don't be intimidated. If you've done steps 1 and 2, you can navigate these waters easily. 4. Learn how to own and operate the word no. That's a Frank Zappa quote. The Vai translation is "Don't panic." It's true, you should never panic or feel desperate. Always know that your instincts are coming from a place that will pay off in the long run. It can take a lot of courage to follow your instincts, because there's a barrage of storms you're going to hit in the music business. But if you follow steps 1 and 2, you'll understand number 4. A high quality no means although I'd love to have my music in this film, and they're going to pay me X amount of dollars, the film doesn't resonate with me. It's not something I want to be a part of or contribute to. 5. Be friendly with yourself. Go easy on yourself. There is nothing so serious that you can't get through it in a peaceful, calm and smooth manner. Life is about feeling good and having fun. There, I said it. Being friendly with yourself also means being friendly with the people around you, the musicians, the attorneys, everybody you come in contact with. It's amazing how this can change the course of your whole career. Being friendly with yourself first means that you can be critical of yourself, but you have to be constructively critical. Everybody thinks there's such great honor in being self-deprecating, but there's really no need to do so, it's just an extension of ego. This is something that I still need to get over. I do it from time to time. Oh, no, I suck. There's no reason to do that. That's not being friendly with yourself.
Steve Vai gave his opinion on who he thinks is the greatest guitarist of all time, saying to Music Radar, "I very rarely agree with the term best guitar player. It just seems so obscene to put something so subjective into a best category. But if I had to say there was one, I would pick Allan Holdsworth. He was unique in ways that I don't think have been discovered yet. Many musicians can be considered ahead of their time, but usually they're not. They're mainly ahead of everyone else at that time. For example, Jimi Hendrix wasn't ahead of his time. He was perfect for his time and ahead of everyone else. Allan Holdsworth was definitely ahead of his time because it's hard to realize how great he is. Not many people actually understand. It takes time for us to catch up with those that are ahead of their time. I would not be surprised if in 100 years from now, if people are still even listening to guitar, which I suspect they will be, he'll be singled out as the one alone, so to speak. The way he uses the whole tone scale is like his own baby shoes. It's so easy for him. His thought process was phenomenal. I can hear any guitar player and I know what they're doing. I might not be able to play it, but I can see it in my mind's eye. But I do not know what the fuck Alan Holdsworth was doing at all. Steve Vai said Kurt Cobain is an equally legitimate guitar master as any virtuoso out there, telling Ernie Ball. In any field, there's two basic fields of understanding your craft. One of them is the technical side. For someone like Alan Holdsworth, his desire for having a particular technique for getting his point across was different than Kurt Cobain's. They're both valid because they're both individuals that have a particular message. So there's a technical side, but then at some point, you have to go deeper than the technique. You have to get in touch with your musical instincts. The musician added, people say someone like Kurt Cobain wasn't a great guitar player. Well, was he a virtuoso guitar player? You can argue not. But, was he effective? Try to play like Kurt Cobain, it's not that easy. Or Green Day frontman Billy Joe Armstrong. Have you ever seen him play? It's visceral, every note and every chord pops. It sounds like a giant orchestra. That's hard to do. But it was in his head and he required a particular amount of technique to follow what he was hearing in his head. For someone like myself, I wanted it all. Dream Theater guitar master John Petrucci was asked by Sterling Ball for his thoughts on Steve Vai, to which he replied, when I think about him and his guitar playing, and I've said this to my buddies hanging out when we were younger, and listening to Steve Vai's music, to this day he approaches everything that he does in such a unique and original way. I don't think he'll ever run out of ideas. Whenever I hear something new that Steve Vai plays, I'm like, how come I've never heard that done before? How does he constantly innovate? The number of different approaches and techniques that he's doing on his song to get that vocally sound, oh my god, he has the comedy in there. But he's playing stuff that's like really slinky and impossible, so then your guitar shred mind goes, alright, how do you do that? It's the imagination and the uniqueness and the innovation. The next thing that you hear him play, the next album he does or something, I guarantee there'll be something on it where you're like, I've never heard that before. It's insane. It's freaky. John also shared his thoughts on Steve Morse, saying, Steve has this way of playing guitar where for me, I want to learn what he's doing. It inspires me. I'm like, what is he playing? I have to learn those lines. I love the way he interweaves, it's kind of rock, blues, jazz, bluegrass, country, and just makes these really interesting lines. And he'll do something that sounds impossible where you need the technique. My initial reaction when I hear Steve play, besides thinking, wow, this is amazing and beautiful, is, I want to learn that. I literally want to transcribe what he did and find out. Petrucci concluded, this is what I love actually about all the guys, Steve Morse does this, Steve Lukather, Albert Lee does this, all these guys play with such attitude. There's like conviction and attitude. And one of the worst things is when you hear guitar playing that's timid. I like when guitar playing is just, you're letting everything out there, playing with balls, feel and aggression.
One of the things that I don't think it's sort of recognized enough is your contribution to the instrument itself, the creation of the Gem guitar, which, is that 25th anniversary this year as well? The creation, 30th year, sorry. Anyways, it was a total game changer, and many of the electric guitars that we play today and people that are making guitars owe a debt of gratitude to Steve's vision on the Gem. Could you tell me a little bit of how you created it?
Yeah.
And I think also the point I was getting at is Tosin plays an 8-string guitar, right? 9-string guitar.
I think it's, no, 8.
8.
Sorry.
So anyways, you also introduced Gem, also the extra string, which has become such an important part of many young players today.
Yeah. Well, it was very innocent because when I was young, I loved Strats because they had a whammy bar. Yeah. And I knew I had to have a whammy bar. As soon as I saw what a whammy bar does when I was a kid, I said, okay, there I am. That's it. But I didn't like the way they sounded. They weren't rock and roll to me. You know, they weren't Led Zeppelin, you know, or Black Sabbath or something like that. So I loved Les Pauls. I liked the way they sounded, but I couldn't sit with them. I couldn't play them very well. And so working with Frank would get an idea for something, and he would just do it. You know, he didn't make any excuses, and he wasn't afraid to do all sorts of things to a guitar. So I was so young, you know, I was 18 when I started working for him, and then 20 when I joined the band and started touring. So it was impressionable. So I learned if you want to do something, you just do it, you know. So I was thinking I'd like to build a guitar, and I wasn't quite sure what. So there were certain things that I liked and certain things that I disliked about both Stratocasters and Les Pauls, and really there wasn't any other guitar in the market that I was crazy about. Like Telecasters were like, that was like an ice pick in the forehead or something for me to play those things. They were so un-rock and roll to me at the time. Little did I know a lot of the Led Zeppelin stuff was recorded on a telly, right? So I just started thinking, what would I like to see in a guitar? And I went to this little guitar shop in Hollywood. And at the time now, I was joining Dave Roth's band, and I had this beat-up green, I called it the Green Meanie, but it was a Charvel. And it was right when those, what do they call them, the mixture between like a Strat and a Les Paul. There's a terminology for it, but it's basically a Strat style body with a whammy bar with a humbucker pickup. And that was Edward.
Yes.
Yeah. So he really introduced that, and I said, well, that's smart. You know, you don't have to have that single coil pickup when you're trying to rock out. And so I said, well, I know I want that. But there was a lot of other things I wanted, and I went to this little guitar builder. And the first thing I did was I drew the body. I thought that Strats looked really nice, but they weren't that sexy, really. You know, because they kind of had rounded edges and stuff. They were a little utilitarian. So I wanted something a little more kind of angular and sexy, because I think this is very sexy. And I thought, I can't understand why these people are making guitars and they're giving you these frets, but you can't reach them. Duh, you know. And I wanted 24 frets. I think maybe Grover Jackson in a Strat, Super Strat. That's what they call them, yeah. So I wanted 24 frets, and I wanted to be able to, this neck is scalloped, but on the conventional gem, only the last 4 frets are scalloped because you can really grab the note, you know. As Yngwie would say, you can really grab the note by the balls, man. So I thought that was a good idea to scallop them up top, and it was totally cut away, because I thought, I'm just doing this for me, you know, who's going to want this? And totally easy there. Now, one of the elements that was really absorbed into conventional contemporary guitars was the 3 pickup configuration, the way that it's wired.
Right.
Because at the time, I didn't know it was new. It was just something I wanted, but all the research and everything tells us that, yeah, there was no production guitars. But these are humbuckers, and they have more of a fatter, warmer sound than single coils. These are double coils. But one of the great things about a Stratocaster that I loved is they all have single coils, and when you put 2 single coils on at once, like this one and that one, it's a completely different tone. It's like a tubey, kind of warm.
The Hendrixy
kind of thing.
The Little Wing sound.
Yes.
Yes.
And you can't get that with these conventional humbuckers at the time. So I came up with this idea to split the coil, so when I'm in this position, I get the full-on humbucker, which I loved. And in this middle position here, it turns these 2 pickups on, but it splits the coil, so it's 2 single coils. So you have 2 single coil pickups, so you can get that sort of Stratty sound. And that was unique at the time. And then the middle is just this, and then same thing here. You split that coil, and then you got your, you know, balls to the wall here. And that was unique at the time. I only needed one tone control, so I got rid of the other. And I moved it down a little bit, the volume, because on Strats, most guitars, the knobs seem to get in the way. But the one thing, and then there was a couple of simple things, like the input jack. No guitar that I knew of at the time had a practical input jack, because they had them like where you plug them in like this, straight in, like Les Pauls, and you step on the cable and it falls out. Like, duh. You know, so, and Strats had it, however they had it, it was just really easy to step on it and have it come out. So I just put it here, and never a problem, unless, of course, you're swinging around your head. So then, but the real thing was the whammy bar. I love the whammy bar, and the Floyd Rose was popular at the time, and it was new, and that was a godsend. Well, it was hell until they put the fine tuners on it. But none that I had played would go sharp. See how, I mean, that's high. I can fret. I'm fretting those out, you know. No guitar did that. I mean, they would, if you set up a Strat a particular way or a Bigsby, you get a little bit of that, you know, but you don't get the stratosphere. So I was looking at them saying, what's stopping it from doing that? And it was really just the wood on the body of the guitar. So I took a hammer and a screw drum and I recorded the Attitude song. And that was, from what I understand, that's the first floating trem. And then I had like 4 or 5 of these made. And they were just like this.
You forgot the most important part.
I'm getting to it.
Okay.
So this was perfect for me. And I had like 4 or 5 of them. And there's a couple still in existence. I only own 1 now. And then I joined Dave's band, and obviously all the guitar manufacturers were interested in having me use their guitars. But I'm like, well, thank you, I got this one. And, well, we'll make it for you. Like, that could be convenient, right? So I sent it to virtually every manufacturer. And inevitably, I got back their guitar with my name on it. And had nothing to do with what I gave them. So I'm like, you know, no, this is the guitar. But then Ibanez took it. And in 3 weeks, they brought me back the most perfect guitar exactly to my specs. I was just stunned. And I thought, this is great. And then they said, we would like to make this a signature guitar and to release it to the public. And I thought, well, who, you know, it's kind of quirky. I thought, okay, you know, we'll see how it goes. But I thought, there's also elements to this guitar that are very practical and might be borrowed, which is fine. That's how we all stand on the shoulders of everybody that came before us, even in manufacturing. So I thought, what can I do that's completely quirky, bizarre, that no one would really copy because it's just too obvious? I put a handle in it. Yeah. And originally I did it, my friend Joe DeSpagni, it was my best friend from Long Island, he's a guitar builder too. And he did it for me in my earlier guitars. But I thought that it would be just great to be able to pose with it, you know. And of course, one of my favorite things is give the one little evil eye through the hole in the guitar. So that's how it came about. And I have to tell you that I was stunned at the success of this. To this day, frankly, and confidentially, don't tell anybody, 30 years, and and of course you get a royalty because I designed it. I got my biggest royalty check in 30 years last quarter.
Wow.
This guitar. That's how the guitar is consistent. And then they wanted to do, because it's so quirky, they wanted to, Ibanez was interested in making a guitar that was much more reasonably priced, so they asked me if they could make the RG guitar. Well, they already had an RG, but then they wanted to make this guitar without the handle, and that's basically the RG. And that has gone on to be the second, usually third, but the second biggest selling guitar, you know, year after year. And then a few years after I they gave me this, I came up with the idea to put the 7th string on it, and God knows what happened there.